been interested in this weekend, watching the polls. According to MSNBC and CNN, and even on Fox, Joe Biden is showing a substantial lead, and particularly in some swing states. Michigan has been close. Pennsylvania, substantial lead, which may not be unexpected, but even in Florida, things seem to be tied up. But I've always wondered how they're selecting people for polls. And I guess my first comment is, whenever I get a phone call or an email about a poll, I don't respond. I don't tell them. So am I helping or hurting my cause by not showing my hand now? What
I have to step back on what I always thought polls. I didn't always think this. I only just figured this out. Of what polls, the mechanisms behind them is. And I really started thinking about the consultant class. And as a consultant, I'm appreciating this more and more. Of they're really just, as a consultant, you can make a poll do anything you want, just like statistics. It's affected along the whole chain of what questions are asked, how are they asked, who is asked, how is the reporting done, all these things. And basically, you can have the poll kind of say anything you want. If you're not, if you're being bad about it. So it's really about continuing the consultant class. And so they're only talking to people who, one, they associate with, kind of. So it's like, again, you're not going to answer the polls. Most people don't answer the polls. The people who answer the polls are whack jobs. They are fundamentalists, on either side. So you have a high degree of participation. Now, our elections aren't driven on that. Our elections are a race to the bottom, to where half the country doesn't think politics affects them, thinks voting is effective, and they're kind of right. And the other half are divided into partisan camps. So they're always going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. Do you think people are affected by the polls? If your candidate is showing a lead, does that encourage you to work harder or discourage you?
It's going to discourage you. Now, we're talking about the people who can be affected. So I always have to divide. The people who aren't going to be affected, they were going to vote blue or red no matter what. It doesn't matter. And when you race to the bottom and you have those slim margins, then it's all up to the managerial class to affect that, right? Mm-hmm. When you have people, the unexpected, come up. So now with your choices to vote or not vote, you're not really voting for anybody, right? The swing vote is the true protest vote. So these are the, okay, I don't like Trump, so I'm going to vote for Clinton, or I don't like Clinton, so I'm going to vote for Trump. Like that's what they're doing. They're not voting out of principle. Yeah. They're protesting. So now the choice is, do I vote or not? Do I get COVID or not? And the answer is going to be, they're not going to vote.
Yeah.
But we also don't have the unexpecteds coming in. So the unexpecteds in Obama was the black vote. So most black people, probably more than others, I would imagine, would understand that the system's not for them, so why bother? But they had this one slim thing of, I can get a symbol in. And so they turned out, and he won by large margins.
Yeah.
Same with Bernie Sanders, and the same with Trump. And the people who voted for Trump before, their reasons, now some of them are just cult followers and they're going to do it no matter what, but the rest of them are kind of upset with Trump just like we all are. And so he's not going to get the unexpecteds.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tight race, just like every other tight race.
Well, one of the things, I guess the obvious thing about the polling is, if they announce a national poll, if you include California and Massachusetts and Illinois in the vote, you're going to get a large number of Democratic votes. So you're going to skew the thing in that direction. However, if you polled Iowa, Montana, North Dakota, it's going to go the other way. So I think what I would like to see coming into this election, I know Trump's going to win Kentucky. I don't have any doubt about that. I would think there was voter fraud if he didn't win,
Right.
because something screwy. I know that Biden is going to win California. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So what I'd really like to see is the states that are actually in play. If you give me a picture of Florida and Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona and Pennsylvania, and let's focus our attention there. Forget about California and Kentucky and Massachusetts. It's already a done deal. And it doesn't matter if Biden gets every single voter in California and every eligible voter votes, there's still only a certain number of electoral votes that he gets from California. So we could have like as we did in the 2016 election, we could have a large majority of people vote for one candidate and the other one's going to win. So right now, the only polls that I think are important are the ones in those states in question. And in those states, the point you were making is it's important not to poll people on which way are you going to vote, but are you going to vote? Is that going to, or is it going to make a difference to you in how you vote, or is it just a matter of whether you vote?
No, it's a matter of whether you're voting. And unfortunately, I haven't heard of a single thing to find likely voters, especially if you weren't registered. So when you're doing polling, you're looking at your past registration. Now, maybe a lot of people registered because of 2016, and now they're out of the cycle again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what does that mess up?
Yeah.
Your likely voters, again, if it's an unexpected group, it's not going to be part of. My cat jumped on the screen. If you're part of the unlikely voter, how do you find an unlikely voter is the question. Let's just skip it. And even with landlines, I don't know who was answering those. I don't think polling has ever been truthful. I think it's been accurate only because the system it's not broken, it's fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So driving votes down helps both parties, both establishments. Depressing voter enthusiasm helps both establishments, and where you can really carve out your diehard fundamentalists, and I call them brainwashed people, and they'll always do what you say. And if you really lock it down, then you've controlled, I don't know what the corporate manufacturing terms are, but I'm sure they apply. You've controlled the levers, right? And you don't want a surprise. And so that's where elections have been heading my entire life. I've always seen it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I sometimes wonder what it would be like if we could eliminate all of the polls. I think it would be healthier in many ways for the democracy if we eliminated the polls, because that means we would have to continue the discussion with everyone. As it is, people in Kentucky, I don't know what it's like in Chicago, but in Kentucky, we're not talking about the presidential election. I mean, everybody's already made up their mind, and most of us have figured out that Trump's going to win Kentucky. So we may be interested in afar, and I'm more concerned about what's happening in Florida than I am in Kentucky, because that's going to be the decisive thing. I remember very well in 2016 on election night, when I heard that Trump had won Florida, I said, well, it's all over. The folks I was with said, oh no, we're going to run away with it. No, Florida calls it. And I think the same thing will happen this year. Whoever wins Florida is going to win the election. And it's just the numbers. Yeah. But
I've heard it was Pennsylvania.
Well, I think Biden will get Pennsylvania. I think they'll split in some of Trump may end up with Wisconsin. I don't know. Those people are cheesy up there. But the problem is the polls themselves affect the election. They affect the discussion. That right now, the attitude of many people in the Democratic camp is that it's Biden's to lose. You know, we've got the vote. Well, I don't think that's true. I think as of right now, Trump wins. As of this moment, he wins. And there's a lot of reasons why I think that. One of them is early voting. If you know, I've already voted, so the desire to get in discussions and debates about who I'm going to vote for, it's moot. I've already voted. You know, so
Right.
I'm kind of out of the discussion. I don't want to talk about it.
Again, I count you in the people who are going to vote regardless.
Right.
And in this day and age, in the partisanship day and age, what were the chances that you were going to vote Republican? Zero.
I mean,
what were the chances that your Republican friends were going to vote Democrat?
No.
Zero. The ones that were going to vote and have voted. Right. So you're back to.
Well, now I might say in the case of some Republicans, there are some, you know, Romney-esque, or I guess you could call them Sass-esque now that Ben Sass has made his Trump denial. There are some people who might, who have traditionally voted Republican, who might vote against Trump because of what he's done to the Republican Party. But I agree with your point that for the most part, people have decided, even before the case, kind of like the Republicans on the Supreme Court nomination, we're going to support the candidate. Well, we haven't decided on a candidate yet. Well, it doesn't matter, whoever it is. You know, so
if we were, I like it's the popularity contest. I saw this with Bernie of the polls worked against him because, again, how the polling was done and who was doing the polling led somebody who wasn't paying attention to believe that Bernie had no chance, even though they probably would have agreed with him. And it took a mountain of people to finally switch that dynamic. And when they did, everybody I know became a Bernie fan.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them. There were very few Clinton holdouts, and they just got quiet, right? So it helps with enthusiasm, but only if the unexpecteds can come out, and the establishment do not want the unexpecteds.
No.
So I think it's actually, the stage is set for the worst case scenario, to where the margins won't change and it'll be very thin everywhere. And because of COVID, because of mail-in voting, the vote will be in question. People will not give, either side will not give the other side legitimacy. We could come down to a showdown in the House of Representatives, and the worst thing could happen. Like, I hope there is a significant, and I don't know what the significant percentage would be on election night, of Biden winning. And, you know, if he's winning by 10 points on election night, praise the Lord. But to your point, I don't think it's as rosy as people say. No. And when the big kicker is when they think Biden's going to win, maybe they don't. You know, the people who don't vote or who just voted in 2016, the chances of them spending the time to register by mail, get their ballot, drop it off at a polling center or mail it in, either one, as opposed to, oh yeah, it's voting day, I need to go down to the thing. Mm-hmm. Those people won't go down to the thing. It's COVID.
Well, I think you're right. And another scenario that I can envision is it's election day in Wisconsin. The COVID virus is spiking. It's hitting incredible heights. Each day is a new record. Suddenly it's election day and you haven't voted yet. So if you're a Republican, you don't care. It's all a myth. I'll just go down and vote. If you're a Democrat, you say, oh my God, I don't want to die. So I'm not going to go to those polls. And that's a scenario that I fear, is that the COVID virus will scare Democrats away from the polls and it won't scare the Trump base.
Now, will the mail-in surge counteract the Republican unafraids?
It's really hard to say. It's really, we're in uncharted waters here because we have had such a large number of mail-in votes, and it's increasing. Probably there could be close to 100 million mail-in votes. I mean, they're it's feasible. I don't know how many they've sent out, but they've gotten in like 50 million so far. So I don't know. It's one of those things where it's kind of a toss-up. Which way are people going to go? Like you said, I knew who I was going to vote for. I got the ballot early. I filled it in. I drove it down to the clerk's office and dropped it off personally.
Right.
Well, if I hadn't done that, I'd show up at the polls, wearing a hazmat suit if I had to make sure that my vote was cast. Now, I live in Kentucky, where it doesn't matter how I vote anyway. We're going to lose. I understand now. I want to vote for my congressman. I want to cast a ballot. But as far as the presidential race is concerned, it doesn't matter. Somebody who lives in a toss-up state and they're weighing, I don't know which way to go with this, and I don't know whether my vote's going to count, and I really don't want to get COVID or put my family at risk. The easiest thing is to do nothing, sit back and watch, and that's what I'm afraid may happen.
Now that also, I think it affects the possible Republican vote more than we think, because that's going through their heads too. And remember, it's the old people who vote. So
yeah, the ones that are not dead.
Right. Yeah, sometimes even the dead ones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this COVID virus scares the shit out of people my age.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a real thing that I see younger people even here on our block, seemingly ignoring it, and everybody who's 60 or older is saying, "Whoa, don't get near me." So it's a big influence. But I think
now that's why I exactly think the voter turnout is going to be suppressed, aside from mail-in ballots, which are heavily Democratic, but are very disputable.
Right.
So I think if it was ever going to happen, it's going to go to the House this time.
Okay. Well, let's wind this up with a little poll of our own. Okay. First of all, will the Democrats keep the House?
I believe so. They might even flip the Senate. So I don't know.
I say they will keep the House. I say the Senate is going to end in a tie, which means the presidential election determines who controls the Senate. If it's 50-50, the VP casts the deciding votes. Okay. And what about the big one? Who's going to do it? Right. As of today, which is the 18th of October? Yeah. What do you think the outcome will be percentage wise?
I mean, I'm gonna call Biden for a point.
Okay. I think on election night it's going to be too close to call. I think it will be a very tight squeeze, and I predict that Biden will prevail in a just a real squeaky tight race, and then all hell's going to break loose.
Yeah. Well, I would go. You've got me thinking. Is like if it's squeaky tight and it goes through all the legal and even goes to the House or whatever. I think if I were an establishment, I would want that until I realized that I didn't understand that when you rile up the American people, it usually doesn't work out in your favor. So you got to call it. So then they come down for Biden.
Okay.
Now I do want to close out on like how polling could work. And I have to, aside from how it could actually work in a good way, let's not think about that because that's foolishness. How it could work in an American way is we need a weekly debate program, whatever, and it's American Idol style, where I can call in and see who I want my class president to be, popularity contest, and just keep doing that. Now, that's going to be messed up because if somebody that the media and the corporations and the rich people don't want becomes popular, which would be so easy to do, they'd shut it down in a heartbeat.
Mm.
But I think American Idol, we know how to do it. We're good at it. Let's do that.
I don't know. Remember who watches those kinds of shows. You know, I can't stand them. I never watch them. So.
Well, that's what politics looks like. So.
All right.